Africa, a continent marked by centuries of colonial influence, is undergoing a seismic shift. Once dominated by France's political and military presence, nations across West Africa are now reclaiming their sovereignty, severing ties with their former colonizer. In Senegal, Chad, and even the Ivory Coast, these changes reflect a broader movement, a determined effort to chart a new course in a multipolar world. Over the past decade, anti-French sentiment in West Africa has surged. In 2023, an Afrobarometer survey revealed that over 60% of respondents in Francophone Africa viewed France's influence as negative. What led to this dramatic turning point? And what does the future hold for these nations? Let's dive into the untold story of Africa's resurgence. The tipping point in Senegal and Chad. In Senegal's bustling capital, Dakar, the winds of change are unmistakable. Newly elected President Bassirou Diomaye Faye recently signaled an imminent departure of French troops stationed in the country since 1960. This move followed Chad's bold announcement on its Independence Day, where President Mahamat Déby declared a halt to defense cooperation with France, a critical step in redefining sovereignty. Chad has been central to France's military operations in the Sahel, hosting the operational headquarters for Operation Barkhane. Operation Barkhane was a French-led military mission launched in 2014 to combat Islamist insurgencies across the Sahel region, involving around 5,100 troops and partnerships with local governments. Despite some tactical successes, it faced growing criticism for its perceived ineffectiveness and neo-colonial overtones, leading to its official termination in 2022. France has since shifted its strategy to prioritize flexible, partnership-driven approaches in Africa. However, despite this presence, insurgent attacks in the Sahel region rose by 32% between 2019 and 2022, raising questions about the effectiveness of French interventions. In Senegal, economic frustration has amplified political discontent. Although France remains Senegal's largest trading partner, with bilateral trade exceeding $1 billion in 2022, many Senegalese believe that these relationships disproportionately benefit French interests. The waning influence of Françafrique. For decades, France's Françafrique policy maintained economic, political, and military control over its former colonies. In 2021, France had over 5,100 troops stationed across West Africa, supporting anti-terrorism efforts under Operation Barkhane. However, public perception has shifted. The perception of Françafrique as a tool of neo-colonialism has sparked protests across nations. In Mali and Burkina Faso, French flags were burned during demonstrations in 2022, signaling widespread rejection of the old order. In response, French President Emmanuel Macron announced a renewed partnership strategy in early 2023, focusing on reducing permanent military bases. France has since downsized its troops in Niger, Chad, and Mali by over 40%, transitioning to advisory roles. Yet, the question remains, can these efforts repair a deeply fractured relationship? The Ivory Coast steps away. Ivory Coast, often considered France's strongest ally in West Africa, delivered a significant blow to French influence in 2024. President Alassane Ouattara announced the withdrawal of French military forces, marking the closure of the Port Bouet base, operational since 1961. In an end-of-year address, the Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara said the withdrawal would begin in January 2025 and reflected the modernization of the nation's army. This decision reflects a broader trend of modernization in the Ivorian armed forces, with $1 billion allocated to defense reforms between 2020 and 2024. Despite these advancements, challenges persist. Ivory Coast remains heavily reliant on cocoa exports, accounting for 40% of global supply. Maintaining stability amidst these transitions is critical for economic resilience. The role of competing global powers. As France's influence wanes, new players are vying for influence. Russia's Wagner Group has filled the void in nations like Mali and the Central African Republic. In Mali, where French troops were expelled in 2022, Wagner's presence has grown. Yet, reports from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project ACLED, highlight a 20% increase in civilian casualties since Wagner's arrival. China, on the other hand, focuses on economic diplomacy. As Africa's largest trading partner, Chinese trade with the continent reached $282 billion in 2022, with $49 billion invested in infrastructure projects. Similarly, Turkey has expanded its footprint, increasing its trade volume with Africa from $5.4 billion in 2003 to $34.5 billion in 2023. A rising call for sovereignty. The call for sovereignty extends beyond politics. It resonates deeply with African society. Protests across Francophone Africa have drawn thousands, demanding an end to perceived neo-colonial practices. In Mali, slogans like "France out" dominate rallies, reflecting a collective desire for autonomy. Chad's President Déby emphasized this shift by forming strategic alliances with Russia and China, diversifying the nation's international partnerships. Similarly, Senegal is exploring collaborations with Turkey and the African Union, aiming to bolster its regional leadership. Economic realignments. The shift from French dominance extends to economic policies. France has historically controlled the CFA francs, used by 14 African countries. In 2020, Ivory Coast and other nations announced plans to phase out the CFA franc in favor of the ECO, a regional currency aimed at enhancing economic independence. Meanwhile, Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, remains a focal point for trade realignments. In 2023, Nigeria surpassed South Africa as France's largest trading partner in Africa, highlighting the ongoing reconfiguration of economic ties. The path forward. Africa's break from French influence marks a new chapter in its history. This transition offers opportunities for self-reliance, but also poses challenges. Strengthening domestic institutions, diversifying alliances, and addressing social inequalities will be critical for sustainable development. For global powers, the message is clear. Only partnerships built on mutual respect will endure. For Africa, the path forward lies in unity and innovation, ensuring that the continent's vast potential is realized. Africa's story is one of resilience, transformation, and hope. As Senegal, Chad, and Ivory Coast chart their paths forward, they exemplify the spirit of self-determination. In a world where geopolitics is increasingly multipolar, Africa is no longer a passive participant. It is a decisive actor, reclaiming its destiny and reshaping the global order. Join us as we continue to uncover the stories shaping Africa and the world. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter.